The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Marcus Wright ran a mop across the showroom floor of Prestige Auto, careful to leave no streaks on the gleaming white tiles that reflected the polished chassis of luxury vehicles. His movements were methodical, practiced, a man who took pride in his work regardless of what that work was. The dealership had closed for the night, but Marcus wasn't alone. From the glass-walled office at the far end of the showroom, laughter erupted, followed by the distinctive voice of Richard Harlow, the dealership's general manager. "Another record month, gentlemen," Harlow announced, raising a tumbler of whiskey. "We're absolutely crushing it." Marcus kept his head down, continuing his steady pace across the floor. He'd learned that invisibility was an art form, one that revealed more than any direct questioning ever could. For 3 months, he'd been watching, listening, absorbing everything about how Prestige Auto operated, and Harlow, with his slicked-back hair and custom suits, never once suspected that the quiet janitor pushing a mop was taking mental notes on every aspect of his business practices. "Marcus," Harlow's voice cut through the showroom, "make sure you get under the display platforms this time. Last week was sloppy." Without looking up, Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir, Mr. Harlow." Harlow emerged from his office, 3 sales managers trailing behind him like remoras following a shark. All wore identical expressions, smug satisfaction mixed with the hungry look of men who measured their worth by commission checks. Harlow strode across the showroom, deliberately walking over a section Marcus had just mopped. "You know," Harlow said, stopping to inspect a midnight blue Mercedes, "my father always told me education was the difference between standing where I am and pushing that mop. He wasn't wrong, was he, Marcus?" The sales managers chuckled on cue. Marcus paused, a momentary tightness crossing his features before his expression returned to neutral. "I suppose everyone has their place, Mr. Harlow," Marcus replied, the words measured and calm. Harlow seemed disappointed by the lack of reaction. He straightened his Italian silk tie and checked his reflection in the car window. "Indeed they do. And speaking of places, don't forget the bathrooms tonight. The one in the customer lounge was disgusting this morning." "I'll take care of it," Marcus said, resuming his work as Harlow and his entourage headed toward the exit. "Gentlemen," Harlow announced, pausing at the door, "tomorrow we start moving those new Audis. The markup is insane, and the regional director is watching our numbers. Remember, no financing below 7.9%, regardless of credit score. We make our real money in the finance office." He glanced back at Marcus. "Lock up when you're done, and don't even think about joyriding. The cameras see everything." After the door closed behind them, Marcus stood motionless for several seconds. Then a faint smile crossed his lips as he pulled out his phone and made a note. The device wasn't a budget model like one might expect from someone earning janitor's wages. It was the latest flagship smartphone in a slim executive case. But such details were often invisible to men like Harlow, who saw only what they expected to see. Marcus Wright was indeed cleaning the floors of Prestige Auto, but not because it was his only option. The truth was far more complicated, and would soon turn Richard Harlow's world upside down. At precisely 9:30 a.m. the next morning, Harlow pulled his BMW into his reserved parking space with the custom sign reading, "General Manager, Park Elsewhere." He adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror, rehearsed his confident smile, and grabbed his leather briefcase from the passenger seat. Today was going to be a good day. He could feel it in his bones. The Audi shipment had arrived, the weekend was approaching, and suckers, or valued customers as they were officially called, would soon be streaming through the doors, ready to be upsold on everything from extended warranties to fabric protection. The familiar scent of automotive showroom, a carefully calibrated mixture of leather, subtle air freshener, and new carpet, greeted him as he pushed through the front doors. The sales floor was already alive with activity, his team moving displays and arranging brochures before the dealership officially opened. "Morning, Mr. Harlow," called out Lisa Chen, his finance manager and the only woman in a leadership position at Prestige. "The numbers from last month are finalized. We beat projections by 12%. Harlow nodded, barely acknowledging her as he headed toward his office. "Of course we did. Send me the breakdown by salesperson." Inside his glass domain, Harlow settled into his ergonomic chair and surveyed his kingdom. Everything was as it should be, polished, profitable, and under his control. He'd worked his way up to this position over 15 years, starting as a hungry sales associate just like the ones he now commanded. The general manager title at a high-end dealership like Prestige was the pinnacle in the automotive sales world, short of ownership itself, but owners were just investors with checkbooks. The real power, the day-to-day control that belonged to Harlow. He was midway through his first coffee when his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Harlow?" It was Jessica, the receptionist. "There's a Marcus Wright here to see you." Harlow frowned. The name registered, but the context was wrong. Marcus was the night janitor. Why would he be here during business hours? "The janitor? What does he want?" There was a pause before Jessica replied, sounding confused. "I'm not sure, sir. He's wearing a suit, not a uniform. He says it's important, something about operations review." Harlow's frown deepened. "Tell him to make an appointment or come back after hours. We open in 20 minutes. Another pause. "He says he's already made an appointment, sir. It should be on your calendar for 9:45. Irritated now, Harlow pulled up his scheduling app. There it was. M's Wright Operations Review, 9:45 a.m. He had no recollection of setting this meeting, but his days were often a blur of appointments. "Fine. Send him in when it's time, and get me the paperwork on the new Audi inventory." At exactly 9:45, there was a knock on his door. When it opened, Harlow had to mask his shock. The man who entered was indeed Marcus Wright, but nothing like the humble janitor who cleaned the floors each night. This Marcus wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that Harlow's experienced eye recognized as costing more than his monthly car payment. His shoes were handcrafted Italian leather, his tie a subtle silk that spoke of refined taste rather than flashy status-seeking. Most jarring of all was his demeanor. Gone was the slouch and downcast eyes of the custodian. This Marcus stood straight, moved with purpose, and met Harlow's gaze with unwavering confidence. "Good morning, Mr. Harlow," Marcus said, his voice carrying the same timbre but none of the deference Harlow was accustomed to. "Thank you for making time for me today." For a rare moment, Richard Harlow found himself speechless. His brain scrambled to reconcile the man who emptied trash bins with the executive now standing before him. "Marcus, what's this about?" he finally managed, not offering a seat. Marcus smiled slightly and seated himself anyway. "I believe it's time we had a conversation about how Prestige Auto is being managed." He opened a sleek leather portfolio and removed several documents. "Specifically, we should discuss the systematic overcharging on financing, the manipulation of credit applications, and the interesting practice of adding undisclosed fees to final contracts." Harlow's face flushed red. "I don't know what game you're playing, but you're way out of line. You're a janitor. If this is some kind of blackmail attempt—" "I'm not a janitor, Mr. Harlow," Marcus interrupted calmly. "At least, not primarily. For the past 3 months, I've been working nights here for a specific purpose." He slid a business card across the desk. "My full-time occupation is somewhat different." Harlow picked up the card, his expression morphing from anger to confusion, then to something approaching horror as he read, "Marcus Wright, President and CEO, Wright Automotive Group." "This is a joke," Harlow said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Wright Automotive Group purchased Prestige Auto from the previous owners 3 months ago," Marcus explained, sliding forward ownership documents with his signature prominently displayed. "Rather than announce the change immediately, I wanted to observe operations firsthand. A luxury car dealership generates tremendous revenue, but the profit margins depend heavily on the ethical standards of its management. I've found that nothing reveals those standards more clearly than how people treat those they believe are beneath them. Harlow's mind raced, replaying every interaction he'd had with Marcus over the past 3 months. Every dismissive comment, every condescending remark, every floor deliberately walked across moments after being mopped. "I don't understand," Harlow said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Why would the owner of a dealership group work as a janitor? This makes no sense." "On the contrary," Marcus replied, "it makes perfect sense. When executives visit, managers put on their best behavior. The books get cleaned up, everyone follows policy, and problems vanish like morning fog. But how you treat the maintenance staff, the lot attendants, the detail crew, that reveals character. And how you speak when you think only your trusted sales managers are listening, that reveals business practices." Marcus opened a folder containing what appeared to be surveillance transcripts. "For instance, your team meeting last month where you instructed staff to, quote, switch the numbers around on credit applications for subprime buyers. Or your colorful description of first-time car buyers as, and I'm quoting directly, fish in a barrel who don't know any better than to pay full sticker plus add-ons." Harlow's collar suddenly felt too tight. "Those were just motivational tactics, sales talk. It's a tough business, you know how it is." "I do know how it is," Marcus agreed. "I've owned 12 dealerships across 3 states for the past 15 years. Some perform exceptionally well without resorting to predatory tactics. Others—" He let the thought hang unfinished. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the muffled sounds of the dealership coming to life beyond the glass walls. Employees were watching curiously, wondering why the janitor was sitting in the general manager's office dressed like an executive. "What happens now?" Harlow finally asked. His earlier confidence evaporated. Marcus closed his portfolio. "That's what we're here to discuss. Prestige Auto will be undergoing significant changes in management structure and business practices, effective immediately." As the full reality of his situation dawned on him, Richard Harlow's face cycled through a range of emotions: disbelief, anger, calculation, and finally, a desperate attempt at reconciliation. "Listen, Marcus, Mr. Wright, clearly we got off on the wrong foot. But I've made this dealership profitable. The numbers don't lie. Whatever you heard or saw, I can explain. We should talk about this, man to man." Marcus regarded him thoughtfully. "We are talking, Mr. Harlow. And yes, the numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole truth either. Profitability built on deception isn't sustainable. It's not just about the bottom line, it's about how you get there." Harlow leaned forward, switching to his most persuasive sales voice. "I understand completely, and I'm on board with whatever changes you want to make. New leadership, new direction. I can adapt." Marcus studied Harlow's face, noting how quickly the man shifted from shock to self-preservation. It was a trait he'd observed repeatedly during his 3 months undercover, Harlow's remarkable ability to recalibrate his approach depending on who held power in any given situation. "Adaptation implies genuine change, Mr. Harlow," Marcus replied, his tone measured. "What you're describing sounds more like survival instinct." Before Harlow could respond, a knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal Lisa Chen, the finance manager, holding a stack of folders. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her eyes darting curiously between Harlow and Marcus. "The Audi paperwork needs your signature before—" She stopped abruptly, recognition dawning on her face as she looked more closely at Marcus. "You're the janitor?" "Ms. Chen." Marcus stood and extended his hand. "Marcus Wright. I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Lisa hesitantly shook his hand, confusion evident in her expression. "I don't understand what's happening here." Harlow cleared his throat. "Lisa, Apparently Mr. Wright here is our new owner. He's been working as the night janitor to observe us." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. Lisa's eyes widened. "Owner? But I thought Prestige was owned by Vantage Point Investments." "Vantage Point was acting as an intermediary," Marcus explained. "Wright Automotive Group completed the acquisition 3 months ago." 3 months?" Lisa repeated, her professional composure momentarily shaken. "You've been mopping floors and emptying trash for 3 months while owning the company?" Marcus nodded. "The most valuable insights rarely come from boardroom presentations. They come from seeing how a business truly operates when nobody thinks the owner is watching." Lisa's gaze shifted to Harlow, whose complexion had taken on an ashen quality. She was quick to connect the dots. "I see," she said, straightening her posture. "Well, Mr. Wright, as our finance manager, I should inform you that I've documented several concerns about our lending practices over the past year. I have a comprehensive file if you're interested." Harlow shot her a venomous look, but Lisa kept her eyes fixed on Marcus. "I would be very interested in reviewing those documents, Ms. Chen," Marcus replied. "Perhaps you could join our discussion? I suspect your perspective would be valuable." "Absolutely," Lisa agreed, visibly relieved. "Lisa," Harlow interjected, his voice strained with forced pleasantness, "why don't you come back after Mr. Wright and I have concluded our meeting? I'm sure he doesn't want to dive into departmental minutiae just yet." "Actually," Marcus countered, "those details are precisely what interests me. Please, Ms. Chen, have a seat." As Lisa took the chair beside him, Marcus noted the subtle differences in how she had treated him as a janitor versus now. She had always been civil, nodding politely when they crossed paths, occasionally offering a brief good evening, but there had been a professional distance, an acknowledgement of their separate worlds. Now there was attentiveness, engagement, and something else, hope, perhaps. "Before we continue," Marcus said, addressing them both, "I should clarify my intentions. I'm not here to clean house, so to speak. I'm here to understand which aspects of this business need transformation and which are worth preserving." Lisa nodded, while Harlow forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Wright," Lisa began, "I've been tracking our finance practices for the past 18 months. There are patterns that concern me, particularly regarding our minority customers and first-time buyers." Harlow interrupted. "Lisa oversees an extremely profitable department. Our finance penetration rates are among the highest in the region." "At what cost?" Lisa countered, emboldened by Marcus's presence. "We're charging Latino and Black customers an average of 3 percentage points higher than white customers with identical credit scores." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You've documented this systematically?" "Yes," Lisa confirmed. "I started tracking it when I noticed the pattern. I've brought it up in management meetings twice, but was told to focus on the bottom line." Harlow shifted uncomfortably. "Market-based pricing is standard industry practice. We adjust rates based on multiple factors." "Race shouldn't be one of them," Marcus interrupted firmly. "Ms. Chen, I'd like to see your complete analysis this afternoon." The dynamics in the room had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a confrontation between Marcus and Harlow had evolved into something more complex, a realignment of alliances within the dealership's power structure. A commotion outside the glass office drew their attention. Sales associates were gathering, pointing, and whispering. Word was spreading through the showroom like wildfire. "It appears our conversation has attracted an audience," Marcus observed. "Perhaps it's time to address the entire staff." Harlow's face fell. "Right now? Without any preparation or transition plan?" "The transition began 3 months ago," Marcus replied, standing. "They just didn't know it yet." As Marcus stepped out of the office with Lisa and a reluctant Harlow following behind, the showroom fell silent. Salespeople froze mid-conversation. The receptionist stopped typing. Even the porter paused while arranging key fobs on the board. Among the staff stood Terrence Jackson, the dealership's top salesman who, unlike his colleagues, showed no surprise at Marcus's transformation. Instead, a knowing smile played across his features. As the only black sales associate at Prestige, Terrence had formed a quiet alliance with Marcus during late evenings when he stayed to finalize paperwork, and Marcus cleaned the building. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus addressed the gathered staff. "For those who don't recognize me without a mop in my hand, I'm Marcus Wright. For the past 3 months, I've been working nights as your janitor. Today, I'm introducing myself in my other capacity, as the CEO of Wright Automotive Group and the new owner of Prestige Auto." A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by uncertain murmurs. "Is this some kind of joke?" called out Brad Collins, one of the senior salesmen and Harlow's most loyal supporter. "It's not a joke, Mr. Collins," Marcus replied. "Though I understand your confusion, I want to assure everyone that my unconventional approach wasn't meant to deceive, but to understand. A dealership is more than balance sheets and inventory reports. It's people. It's culture. It's the values that drive your daily decisions, especially when you think no one important is watching." The emphasis on important wasn't lost on the staff. Several shifted uncomfortably, no doubt recalling how they'd treated the quiet janitor who now stood before them as their employer. "Over the coming days, I'll be meeting with each department to discuss changes and improvements. For now, please continue with your regular responsibilities. Ms. Chen and I will be working closely to review current practices, particularly in the finance department." Brad shot a scornful look at Lisa, who stood straighter under the implied accusation. "One immediate change," Marcus continued, "effective today, all financing markups will be standardized and transparent to customers. No exceptions, no targeted increases based on demographics or perceived negotiating ability." Harlow stepped forward, attempting to reassert his authority. "Everyone, this is obviously a significant development. As your general manager, I'll be working with Mr. Wright to ensure a smooth transition that maintains our profitability while implementing his vision." The presumption hung awkwardly in the air. Marcus didn't contradict Harlow directly, but his subtle, sidelong glance communicated volumes. "My office will be temporarily located in the conference room," Marcus announced. "I invite anyone with concerns or suggestions to speak with me directly. Transparency works both ways." As the staff dispersed, buzzing with the morning's revelation, Terrence approached Marcus with an extended hand. "Mr. Wright," he said loudly enough for others to hear, "it's an honor to properly meet you, sir." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "The honor is mine, Mr. Jackson. Your sales numbers are impressive, especially considering the unique challenges you've navigated here." Terrence nodded, understanding the subtext. As the only black salesman at Prestige, he'd watched customers being steered away from him toward white salespeople for higher-end vehicles. He'd documented how he received fewer walk-in customers despite his seniority, yet he'd still outperformed most of his colleagues. "Perhaps we could discuss those challenges more specifically," Marcus suggested. "I value your perspective." "Absolutely, sir," Terrence agreed, not bothering to hide his satisfaction as Harlow watched the exchange with thinly veiled concern. As the day progressed, Marcus set up in the conference room, systematically reviewing documents and meeting with key staff. By mid-afternoon, Lisa had provided her complete analysis of the finance department's practices, confirming what Marcus had already suspected. The dealership's exceptional profitability was built partly on discriminatory lending practices and hidden fees that disproportionately affected certain customer groups. "This is thorough work, Ms. Chen," Marcus commented, reviewing her spreadsheets. "You've been tracking these patterns for over a year?" Lisa nodded. "At first I thought it might be coincidence, but the statistical pattern became impossible to ignore." "Yet you continued implementing these policies," Marcus observed, his tone neutral but pointed. Lisa's expression tightened. I brought my concerns to management twice. The second time, Mr. Harlow suggested that if the ethical considerations bothered me, perhaps I wasn't cut out for the industry. I have student loans and a mortgage. I needed this job. Marcus understood the predicament all too well. Throughout his career, he'd witnessed how economic pressure could silence ethical concerns, particularly for employees without financial safety nets. Your documentation will be invaluable in restructuring our approach, he told her. I believe in profitable business practices that don't require exploitation. The two aren't mutually exclusive. A knock at the conference room door interrupted them. Brad Collins stood in the doorway, his usual confident demeanor replaced by poorly concealed hostility. Mr. Wright, he said stiffly, some of the sales team have concerns about the changes you mentioned. Please come in, Marcus invited. I welcome open dialogue. Brad entered but remained standing. With all due respect, sir, finance markups are where we make our real money. Standardizing rates will cut our commissions significantly. That's a valid concern, Marcus acknowledged. I understand changes to compensation can create anxiety. But consider this question, Mr. Collins. If your income depends on charging certain customers more than others for the same service based on factors they can't control, is that a sustainable business model? More importantly, is it one you're proud to represent? Brad's jaw tightened. This is car sales, not charity work. Everyone knows you make your profit where you can. Everyone knows, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting assumption. Tell me, do our customers know they're paying thousands more in interest than the person who purchased the same vehicle yesterday simply because of their zip code or the color of their skin? Brad didn't answer directly. Look, I've been in this business 20 years. Every dealership operates this way. If we change, we'll just lose money while our competitors keep doing the same thing. That's where you're wrong, Marcus replied. Wright Automotive Group owns 11 other dealerships that operate with full pricing transparency and standardized finance rates. All are more profitable than Prestige, with higher customer satisfaction scores and, most tellingly, significantly higher repeat and referral business. This information visibly surprised Brad, whose certainty seemed to waver. The old way isn't the only way, Mr. Collins, Marcus continued. I'm not asking you to earn less. I'm offering you the opportunity to earn differently, through volume, customer loyalty, and reputation rather than individual exploitation. Brad Collins processed Marcus's words with visible discomfort. The suggestion that there might be a more ethical, yet still profitable way to run a dealership challenged his long-held beliefs about the industry. I'd like to see the numbers from these other dealerships, Brad finally said, his skepticism evident but his curiosity piqued. I'll arrange for that, Marcus agreed. In the meantime, I hope you'll keep an open mind. Change is difficult but necessary for growth. As Brad left, Lisa turned to Marcus. You're going to face a lot of resistance. This dealership has operated one way for a long time. Some people won't want to learn a new approach. True, Marcus acknowledged, but resistance doesn't always indicate disagreement with the goal. Sometimes it's simply fear of the unknown. Lisa studied him with undisguised curiosity. May I ask why you went to such lengths? 3 months as a janitor. There must have been easier ways to evaluate the business. Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering her question. 20 years ago, I was fresh out of college with a business degree and big ambitions. I applied for a sales position at a dealership much like this one. The manager took one look at me and decided I belonged in the detail department instead. He smiled faintly at the memory. He said they needed a certain type on the sales floor, someone who made customers feel comfortable. That's awful, Lisa said. It was educational, Marcus corrected. I took the detail job and used it to learn everything about the operation from the ground up. 6 months later, when the owner visited, I presented him with a complete analysis of inefficiencies in their sales process, along with recommendations that eventually increased their quarterly profits by 22%. "And he promoted you?" Lisa guessed. "He offered me a sales position," Marcus said with a chuckle. "I declined and asked for a loan instead, to buy my first dealership, a struggling location that nobody wanted. Within a year, it was profitable. I paid back the loan in 18 months and bought my second location." Lisa nodded, understanding dawning. "And now you always evaluate new acquisitions from the inside out. The view from the bottom reveals truths that executive summaries never will," Marcus confirmed. "How managers treat their lowest-paid employees tells me more about the culture than any profit and loss statement." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock. Richard Harlow entered without waiting for a response, his earlier shock now replaced by thinly veiled hostility. "Mr. Wright," he said with forced politeness, "we need to discuss the practical implications of these sudden changes. The sales team is confused, and customers are arriving with no clear direction on revised protocols." "Valid concerns," Marcus acknowledged. "Please sit down." Harlow remained standing, an unconscious assertion of resistance. "We should address the staff together, clarify the chain of command, and establish a gradual implementation timeline. Sudden policy changes will disrupt operations and impact this month's numbers." "The disruption has already begun," Marcus pointed out, "but I agree that clarity is essential. I've prepared an interim organizational chart and policy memo." He slid a document across the table. "Please review and provide your feedback within the hour." Harlow glanced at the paper without touching it. "An hour isn't sufficient for a thorough analysis of organizational restructuring. It's not a comprehensive overhaul, Mr. Harlow, just clarification of immediate changes." Marcus's tone remained cordial but firm. "After you've reviewed it, we'll address the staff together at 4 o'clock. Harlow finally picked up the document, his jaw tight. "And my position in this new structure?" "Remains as general manager," Marcus replied, "with adjusted oversight responsibilities. You'll report directly to me until I appoint a regional director." Something flashed in Harlow's eyes, relief mixed with calculation. He had expected demotion or termination. The reprieve, however temporary, gave him room to maneuver. "I appreciate your confidence," Harlow said, his tone softening marginally. "I believe with proper guidance I can implement your vision effectively." "I certainly hope so," Marcus responded, his expression neutral. After Harlow departed, Lisa leaned forward. "You're keeping him, after everything you've seen?" "For now," Marcus clarified. "People reveal their true intentions when they believe they have a second chance. Besides, immediate termination would create unnecessary drama and divide the staff into factions." "They're already divided," Lisa pointed out. "You saw how Brad looked at me. I'm branded as a traitor for sharing those finance reports." "Transparency often has that initial effect," Marcus acknowledged. "But remember, you didn't create the unethical practices, you merely documented them. The real question is whether this team can adapt to operating without them." Throughout the afternoon, Marcus continued reviewing the dealership's operations, meeting with department heads, and refining his initial assessment. By 4 o'clock, the entire staff had gathered in the showroom, the gleaming vehicles silently witnessing this pivotal moment in the dealership's history. Marcus stood at the center, with Harlow positioned slightly behind him, a visual representation of the shifted power dynamic that wasn't lost on anyone present. "Thank you all for your patience today," Marcus began. "I understand this has been unexpected and perhaps unsettling for many of you. Change often is. But change is also opportunity. And that's what I want to discuss with you now." The staff listened with varying expressions, curiosity, skepticism, concern, hope, as Marcus outlined his immediate plans for Prestige Auto. Effective immediately, We're implementing 4 key changes, he explained. First, all financing will follow standardized markup protocols regardless of customer demographics. Second, all fees will be transparent and uniformly applied. Third, sales assignments will be distributed through a blind rotation system rather than manager discretion. And fourth, a customer satisfaction protocol will be integrated into our commission structure. Murmurs rippled through the assembled employees. Brad Collins exchanged glances with several other salespeople, their discomfort evident. These changes aren't designed to reduce your earnings, Marcus clarified, addressing the unspoken concern. Rather, they're intended to realign incentives with ethical practices that build long-term customer loyalty. My other dealerships operating under these principles average 23% higher per salesperson commission than industry standards, with substantially lower turnover and higher repeat business. This statement quieted some of the murmuring. Terrence Jackson, standing near the back, nodded slightly with a satisfied expression. Mr. Harlow will continue as general manager, Marcus continued, gesturing toward Harlow, who forced a smile. He'll work directly with me to implement these changes. Ms. Chen will oversee the finance department restructuring with expanded authority to ensure compliance with our new standards. Lisa straightened at this announcement, while Harlow's smile faltered slightly. I understand transitions can be challenging, Marcus concluded. Change requires adjustment, learning, and sometimes discomfort. But I believe in the potential of this team. Those who embrace these new standards will find greater opportunity than before. Those who cannot, he paused, letting the implication settle, will need to make personal decisions about their professional future. After the meeting dispersed, Marcus observed the impromptu gatherings that formed throughout the showroom. Salespeople huddled in corners, service technicians conversing in low voices, administrative staff exchanging uncertain glances. It was the natural realignment that follows major organizational change, the human equivalent of tectonic plates shifting and settling. Terrence approached Marcus as the groups thinned out. Bold moves on day one, Mr. Wright. Necessary ones, Marcus replied, though I suspect we're just seeing the beginning of the resistance. Without question, Terrence agreed. Harlow's already working the room, assuring certain people that this is temporary, just the new owner making a statement before things return to business as usual. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. And what do you think, Mr. Jackson? Is this just a theatrical display? I think, Terrence said carefully, that a man who spends 3 months mopping floors to understand a business doesn't make empty gestures. Perceptive observation, Marcus acknowledged with a slight smile. I'd value your continued insights as we move forward. The view from the sales floor is essential to understanding the real impact of these changes. Happy to provide it, Terrence replied, though it might complicate my position with certain colleagues. It already has, Marcus observed, nodding toward Brad Collins, who was watching their interaction with undisguised suspicion. Neutrality isn't an option during transformation. Eventually, everyone must choose which version of the future they support. As evening approached and the dealership closed to customers, Marcus remained in the conference room, reviewing employee files and performance metrics. The building gradually emptied, salespeople departing with subdued conversations different from their usual boisterous end-of-day banter. Around 7, a knock on the door revealed Richard Harlow, his earlier diplomatic facade now absent. I think we need to speak privately, Harlow said, closing the door behind him without waiting for permission. By all means, Marcus replied, setting aside the file he'd been reviewing. Harlow took a seat across from him, leaning forward with his hands clasped. These changes you're implementing, they're theoretical at best, naive at worst. Is that so? Marcus's tone remained even. This isn't some business school case study, Harlow continued, his veneer of respect rapidly thinning. This is the real world of automotive sales. We operate in a highly competitive market with razor-thin margins on new vehicles. The finance office and back-end products are where actual profitability happens. I'm well aware of industry economics, Mr. Harlow, Marcus replied. But you're working from an outdated paradigm. The market is evolving. Customers are more informed, more connected, and increasingly value transparency. Exploitative practices may produce short-term gains, but they're unsustainable. Unsustainable? Harlow scoffed. I've maintained top quartile profitability for 7 consecutive years. At what cost? Marcus asked pointedly. Your customer retention rate is below industry average, your online reputation scores are mediocre at best, and your employee turnover, particularly among minority staff, is alarmingly high. Harlow waved dismissively. Metrics that matter to HR departments and diversity consultants, not to the bottom line. That's where you're wrong, Marcus said firmly. Each of those factors directly impacts long-term profitability. Every customer who doesn't return represents thousands in lost lifetime value. Every negative review deters dozens of potential buyers. Every new employee requires costly training and reduced productivity during ramp-up. Look, Harlow said, his patience visibly wearing thin. I've been running dealerships since you were probably still in college. This business operates on certain realities that don't change just because they're uncomfortable. Some demographic groups simply negotiate less effectively. Others present higher lending risks. These aren't biases. They're market facts that smart managers leverage. Marcus studied him for a long moment. What you're describing aren't market facts, Mr. Harlow. They're systemic practices designed to extract maximum profit from those perceived to have less power or information. It's not only ethically problematic, it's increasingly becoming a legal liability. Harlow's expression hardened. So that's what this is about? You're afraid of some discrimination lawsuit? This isn't about fear of litigation, Marcus replied calmly. It's about building a sustainable business that creates value for customers, employees, and yes, shareholders, without exploiting vulnerable populations. Harlow leaned back, his expression shifting to one of calculated assessment. Fine, you want to run this place like a charity, that's your prerogative as the owner. But you'll learn quickly enough when profits drop and your investors start asking questions. I answer to a board that understands the long game, Marcus explained. They've seen the results across our other dealerships. Prestige isn't our first turnaround, Mr. Harlow, just our most challenging from a cultural perspective. A tense silence stretched between them before Harlow finally stood. I'll implement your changes as directed, he said stiffly. But I'd suggest you keep a close eye on the monthly numbers. Reality has a way of cutting through idealism. After Harlow departed, Marcus remained at the conference table, contemplating the conversation. He hadn't expected immediate conversion, particularly from someone whose entire career had been built on the old model, but Harlow's resistance went beyond mere skepticism. There was something almost personal in his opposition. His phone buzzed with a text from Amara Wright, his wife and the chief operating officer of Wright Automotive Group. How's day one as yourself going? Better than day one as the janitor? Marcus smiled, typing back. Less mopping, more resistance. The GM is going to be a problem. Her response was immediate. Fire him. We've seen enough. Not yet, Marcus replied. Need to see if he attempts to adapt or sabotage. Either way, it's informative. Your call. Dinner tonight? I miss your face. Absolutely. Meeting with finance manager first. Home by 8. As he set down his phone, another knock came at the door. Lisa Chen entered carrying her laptop and a thick folder. I have those reports you requested, she said. Complete finance breakdowns for the past 18 months, sorted by customer demographics. Excellent. Marcus gestured to the seat beside him. Let's go through them. For the next hour, they analyzed the patterns in Prestige's finance operations. The systematic upcharging of minorities, the hidden fees applied disproportionately to women, the unnecessary add-ons pushed hardest on first-time buyers. The data painted a damning picture of institutionalized exploitation. "This goes beyond standard dealer markup," Marcus observed, frowning at a particularly egregious example. "Some of these contracts have finance charges that border on predatory lending." Lisa nodded grimly. "That customer there, a young Latina woman, first-time buyer. We charged her 12.9% when she qualified for 7.3%. The gap added nearly $8,000 to her total cost of ownership. And the justification? Harlow called it market-based pricing, said she didn't negotiate the rate, so she clearly didn't care about it." Lisa's discomfort was evident. "I processed the paperwork knowing it was wrong, but when I raised concerns, I was reminded that my bonus depended on finance profit." "Economic coercion is a powerful silencer," Marcus acknowledged, "but it doesn't absolve us of responsibility." "Us?" Lisa questioned. "Yes, us. I'm not pretending to be morally superior here. Every dealership in my group once operated with some version of these tactics. The industry normalized them to the point where they seemed like standard business practice rather than what they truly are: systematic exploitation." "What changed your perspective?" Lisa asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "About 10 years ago, I visited one of my dealerships unannounced. I watched a young black couple get absolutely fleeced on a used SUV, marked up $3,000 above asking price, charged document fees double what we charged white customers, pressured into unnecessary warranties, and given an interest rate 4 points above what they qualified for." He paused, the memory still visibly affecting him. The finance manager celebrated afterward, bragging about how much back-end profit he generated. I fired him on the spot, but that wasn't enough. The problem wasn't just one unethical employee, it was a system designed to reward exploitation. So I began the long process of transforming our entire approach. "And it worked?" Lisa asked skeptically. "You maintained profitability while eliminating these practices?" "Not immediately," Marcus admitted. "There was a difficult transition period. We lost salespeople who couldn't adapt. Our finance profits temporarily decreased. But within 8 months, something remarkable happened. Our customer satisfaction scores skyrocketed, repeat business increased, and referrals nearly doubled. It turns out treating people fairly creates loyal customers who send their friends." Lisa processed this information, her expression thoughtful. "That's what you're hoping to accomplish here? A complete culture transformation?" "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "But culture change isn't imposed from above. It grows from within when people see the benefits firsthand." As their meeting concluded, Lisa gathered her materials with renewed purpose. "I should warn you," she said hesitantly. "Harlow won't go down without a fight. He's already been on the phone with regional connections, telling them you're an idealistic newcomer who doesn't understand the market." "I expected as much," Marcus replied. "When people can't adapt, they often seek to undermine." "It goes beyond that," Lisa continued. "Harlow has deep connections with the lenders, the manufacturers' reps, even the local business community. He's built his reputation on Prestige's profitability, regardless of how it was achieved." "Reputation and reality often diverge," Marcus observed, "but I appreciate the warning." After Lisa departed, Marcus took a final walk through the quiet showroom. The polished vehicles gleamed under the dimmed evening lights, their price tags discreetly tucked on windows, prices that, he knew, were merely the starting point in a negotiation game heavily rigged against certain customers. As he passed the service department, he was surprised to see a light still on in one of the back offices. Through the glass door, he spotted Terrence Jackson hunched over a computer, intently focused on the screen. "Working late?" Marcus inquired, stepping into the doorway. Terrence looked up, momentarily startled. Mr. Wright, I didn't realize anyone was still here. Just doing a final walkthrough before heading out, Marcus explained. What is you staying after hours? Terrence hesitated, then gestured to the screen. I've been maintaining my own customer database, separate from the dealership's system. Built relationships with clientele that Harlow would have steered elsewhere. Marcus stepped closer, examining the spreadsheet displayed on the monitor. It showed meticulously tracked customer information, purchase history, family details, follow-up notes, and referral connections. This is impressive, Marcus commented. How long have you been doing this? Since my 3rd month here, Terrence replied. After I realized certain customers were being directed away from me, particularly high-end buyers, I started focusing on building lifetime relationships instead of single transactions. Most of my business now comes from repeat customers and their referrals. Marcus nodded, recognizing a kindred approach. You've essentially created your own business within the dealership. Had to, Terrence said simply. It was the only way to succeed in a system designed for me to fail. The candor struck Marcus. Here was an employee who had recognized the structural inequities and, rather than simply complaining or conforming, had created an alternative path. Exactly the kind of initiative and integrity the new Prestige would need. Mr. Jackson, Marcus said, making a decision, how would you feel about taking on a leadership role in our restructuring? Terrence looked up sharply. What kind of role? Sales director, Marcus proposed. You understand customer relationship building better than anyone else here, and you've succeeded despite the system, not because of it. That's precisely the perspective we need to guide the transformation. Terrence sat back, clearly surprised by the offer. Harlow would never accept that. He's been grooming Brad Collins for that position for years. Harlow doesn't make those decisions anymore, Marcus reminded him, though I expect his opposition will be one of many challenges you'd face. Terrence considered this, his expression thoughtful. It would be difficult. Collins has allies on the sales floor. Some would resist taking direction from me. Undoubtedly, Marcus agreed. Change never comes without resistance. The question is whether you're willing to help lead that change, knowing the obstacles you'll face. After a moment's contemplation, Terrence nodded resolutely. I'm in. This dealership needs to evolve, and I'd rather be part of shaping that evolution than watching from the sidelines. Excellent. Marcus extended his hand. We'll announce the appointment tomorrow. In the meantime, I suggest you prepare for the reaction. Not everyone will celebrate your promotion. Story of my career, Terrence replied with a wry smile, shaking Marcus's hand firmly. The following morning, Marcus arrived at Prestige early, well before the usual staff. He wanted time to prepare for what promised to be a pivotal day. He was reviewing notes in the conference room when the front door chimed, announcing an early arrival. Richard Harlow strode through the showroom with purpose, his typical confident swagger seemingly restored. He carried a leather portfolio and wore an expression of smug satisfaction that immediately put Marcus on alert. "Good morning, Mr. Wright," Harlow greeted with artificial pleasantness. "I've been reflecting on our conversation yesterday, and I believe I have a solution that addresses your concerns while maintaining our market position." "I'm listening," Marcus replied, setting aside his notes. Harlow opened his portfolio and removed a glossy presentation folder emblazoned with the Prestige logo. "A comprehensive compliance and diversity initiative," he announced, sliding it across the table. "New training protocols, revised compensation metrics, and a customer satisfaction feedback system, all designed to address the issues you raised while preserving our competitive edge." Marcus opened the folder, skimming the executive summary. The proposal was slick, professionally designed, and filled with corporate buzzwords about inclusion and transparency, without any substantive changes to the underlying business model. "You prepared this overnight?" Marcus asked, noting the professional printing and binding. "I had the framework already developed," Harlow explained smoothly. "Been working on modernizing our approach for some time, just waiting for the right moment to implement. Your arrival provided that catalyst." The claim was transparently false, a hasty attempt to position himself as already aligned with Marcus's vision. The strategy was clear: appear to embrace change while actually preserving the status quo beneath a veneer of progressive terminology. "Interesting timing," Marcus observed neutrally, continuing to review the document. "And who would oversee this initiative?" "As general manager, I would naturally take point," Harlow replied, "with a committee of existing leadership supporting implementation." Of course, a committee composed of Harlow's allies, ensuring any real change would be diluted or derailed. It was a clever maneuver, Marcus had to admit. Present yourself as the solution rather than the problem. Position yourself as indispensable to the very transformation you secretly oppose. "I appreciate the initiative," Marcus said, closing the folder, "but this proposal misses the fundamental issues we need to address." Harlow's smile faltered slightly. "I'm not sure I follow. It covers all the points you raised yesterday: transparency, standardized rates, customer satisfaction metrics." "On paper, yes," Marcus acknowledged, "but implementation matters more than intention. For instance, your proposal suggests working toward more standardized finance rates rather than establishing fixed markup caps immediately. That's not a plan for change, it's a strategy for delay." Harlow shifted in his seat, his confident facade beginning to crack. "Immediate, rigid implementations create disruption. A phased approach allows for adjustment and fine-tuning." "Disruption is precisely what's needed," Marcus countered. "The current system is fundamentally flawed, not merely in need of adjustment." He slid the folder back across the table. "I'll be making several announcements this morning that will clarify our direction. I suggest you focus on adapting to those changes rather than attempting to dilute them." Harlow's expression hardened, the pretense of collegiality evaporating. "With all due respect, Mr. Wright, you're making a serious mistake. This dealership operates in a specific market environment with competitive pressures you may not fully appreciate." "I understand the environment perfectly well," Marcus replied evenly. "What you perceive as naivety is actually a deliberate choice to operate differently and more ethically than our competitors." Before Harlow could respond, the front door chimed again as Lisa Chen arrived, followed shortly by several sales associates. The workday was beginning, and with it, the next phase of Prestige's transformation. By 9:30, the showroom was bustling with activity. Salespeople arranged brochures and inspected vehicles, service technicians prepared for the day's appointments, and office staff processed paperwork from previous sales. The typical morning energy was present, but tinged with an undercurrent of uncertainty. Whispered conversations that paused when managers walked by, sidelong glances at Marcus as he moved through the building. At precisely 10, Marcus called the staff together for his promised announcements. They gathered in the showroom, instinctively arranging themselves in factions, Harlow and his closest allies near the front, Lisa and a few administrative staff to one side, and the majority of employees positioned neutrally in the middle, waiting to see how the power dynamics would unfold. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began. "Yesterday, we discussed initial changes to our finance practices and sales procedures. Today, I want to announce several leadership appointments that will help implement those changes." He gestured to Lisa Chen. "Ms. Chen will be promoted to Finance Director with expanded authority to oversee all lending practices and ensure compliance with our new standardized rate policies." Lisa straightened, a mixture of pride and apprehension crossing her features, as several staff members, particularly those aligned with Harlow, exchanged glances. Additionally, Marcus continued, I'm appointing Terrence Jackson as our new sales director, effective immediately. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Terrence, standing toward the back, maintained a composed expression despite the shocked looks turned his direction. Brad Collins, who had clearly expected that position for himself, flushed red with barely contained anger. Mr. Jackson has demonstrated exceptional customer relationship management and consistent performance despite systemic obstacles. His approach to sales, focused on building lifetime customer value rather than maximizing single transaction profit, aligns perfectly with our new direction. Harlow stepped forward. Mr. Wright, if I might suggest, a transition period would be more appropriate. Brad has seniority and has been training for a leadership role. Perhaps a co-directorship arrangement during the initial phase? It was a transparent attempt to undermine Terrence's authority before it could be established. Marcus met Harlow's gaze directly. The decision is made, Mr. Harlow. Mr. Collins will continue as a senior sales associate unless he expresses interest in another role. He turned to address the entire staff. Change creates opportunity for everyone willing to embrace new approaches. I encourage all of you to view these appointments not as disruptions, but as chances to evolve professionally. The tension in the room was palpable. Brad Collins stood with arms crossed, jaw clenched, while several other salespeople murmured among themselves. Terrence received a few congratulatory nods from service technicians and administrative staff, but the division was clear: the old guard versus the new direction. Mr. Jackson and Ms. Chen will outline specific departmental changes in meetings this afternoon, Marcus concluded. In the meantime, I'll be observing our customer interactions throughout the day. Please continue with your regular responsibilities. As the group dispersed, Marcus caught snippets of conversation. This is temporary. Harlow has connections. He'll push back. I've been saying for years, we need to change how we do business. Jackson doesn't have the experience to lead sales. Maybe it's about time someone shook things up around here. The opinions were mixed, but one thing was certain. The dealership had reached its tipping point. The question now was which direction it would ultimately fall. Brad Collins wasted no time approaching Harlow, their hushed conversation taking place in a corner of the showroom, gestures animated and expressions grim. Terrence, meanwhile, received a warm handshake from Lisa. "Congratulations," she said. "It's about time this place recognized actual talent." "Thanks," Terrence replied. "Though I suspect the hard part isn't getting the title. It's making it work when half the floor is waiting for me to fail." "You're not alone in that," Lisa acknowledged. "Harlow's already been in my office this morning, reminding the finance team that hasty changes could impact their commission structures." Marcus observed these interactions from a distance, understanding that the human dynamics would ultimately determine whether his vision for prestige succeeded or failed. Organizational charts and policy memos could only accomplish so much. True change required shifting hearts and minds. His observations were interrupted by the arrival of customers, a middle-aged black couple, walking tentatively into the showroom, looking at the luxury vehicles with a mixture of interest and caution. Marcus watched as several salespeople noticed them but remained at their desks, an all-too-familiar scenario playing out. After nearly a minute with no acknowledgement, Marcus stepped forward. "Good morning. Welcome to Prestige. I'm Marcus." The woman smiled appreciatively. "Hello. We're just looking at the new SUV models. Our youngest is heading to college, so we're thinking of downsizing from our minivan." "Perfect timing," Marcus replied. "We have several options that might suit your needs. Would you prefer someone from our sales team to show you the inventory?" "That would be great," the husband said. "We've done some research online, but it's always different seeing the vehicles in person." Marcus nodded, then turned to scan the showroom. Several salespeople were visibly available, including Brad Collins, who was leaning against a desk, pretending to review paperwork while clearly watching the interaction. "Mr. Jackson," Marcus called, gesturing to Terrence. "Would you mind assisting these customers?" Terrence approached with a professional smile, extending his hand to the couple. "I'd be happy to. I'm Terrence Jackson, our sales director. Let me show you our latest models." As Terrence led the couple toward the SUV section, Marcus caught Brad Collins rolling his eyes and muttering something to a colleague. The moment encapsulated everything wrong with the dealership's culture, the subtle but pervasive biases that influenced who received service and how. Later that morning, Marcus sat in on the sales meeting Terrence had called to outline new procedures. The resistance was immediate and vocal. "So we're supposed to quote the same price to everyone?" Brad Collins questioned incredulously. "That eliminates negotiation completely." "Not exactly," Terrence clarified. "We'll still have some flexibility, but within a transparent, consistent range. No more arbitrary pricing based on who walks through the door." "That's not arbitrary," Brad argued. "It's market-based. Different customers have different price sensitivities and negotiation skills." "Different customers are treated differently," Terrence corrected firmly. "And the data shows that difference correlates strongly with race, gender, and age. That ends now." Another salesperson, Mike Reynolds, jumped in. "So we're just supposed to leave money on the table? If someone's willing to pay more, why wouldn't we accept that?" "Because short-term gain undermines long-term success," Terrence explained. "When customers discover they paid thousands more than someone else for the identical product and service, they don't come back. They don't refer friends. They leave negative reviews that deter future buyers." "That's theoretical," Brad dismissed. "In practice, most people never compare what they paid." "That might have been true 20 years ago," Marcus interjected from the back of the room. "But in today's connected world, pricing disparities become public knowledge quickly. Forums, social media, review sites, customers share information more than ever before." The room fell silent momentarily as the sales team realized Marcus had been listening to their objections. "Look," Terrence continued, seizing the moment, "I understand the concerns. I've been selling under the traditional model for years too, but I've also been building a customer base that returns again and again because they trust the process. My repeat business percentage is twice the dealership average. My referral rate is 3 times higher. That's not coincidence. It's the direct result of treating people fairly from the start." Marcus nodded appreciatively. Terrence wasn't just implementing changes. He was making the business case for them, speaking to salespeople in terms they understood: numbers, results, and commission potential. "The new system includes bonuses for customer satisfaction and retention," Terrence added. "What you might lose in maximizing individual transactions, you'll more than make up for in volume and repeat business." Some salespeople appeared to be considering this perspective, but Brad remained visibly unconvinced. "We'll try it your way," he said, his tone making it clear he expected failure. "But don't be surprised when the numbers tell a different story." "I'm confident they won't," Terrence replied evenly. "But I welcome you to prove me wrong with data, not just speculation." As the meeting concluded, Marcus approached Terrence. "Well handled. You addressed their concerns directly while standing firm on the principles." "Thanks," Terrence replied, "though I suspect Brad's already planning how to undermine the new approach." "Undoubtedly," Marcus agreed, "which is why we'll need to monitor closely. Old habits die hard, especially when they're profitable." Meanwhile, Lisa was facing similar resistance in the finance department. The finance managers, accustomed to significant discretion in setting rates and fees, balked at the new standardized structure. "We're basically becoming processors," complained Tom Gaines, the senior finance manager. "If everyone gets the same rate, what value do we add?" "Transparent service," Accurate information and efficient processing are values, Lisa countered. Plus, we'll be expanding our product offerings with legitimately beneficial options rather than pushing overpriced add-ons on vulnerable customers. The current products have the highest margins, Tom argued, and the highest cancellation rates once customers realize what they've actually purchased, Lisa pointed out. We're shifting from a model of sell it and forget it to one of lifetime customer value. The first day under new leadership unfolded with a palpable tension throughout Prestige Auto. By early afternoon, the changes were already affecting customer interactions, some for better, others revealing just how deeply entrenched the old practices were. Marcus observed from various vantage points around the showroom, sometimes openly, sometimes lingering just out of sight where conversations couldn't be easily censored. His time as the janitor had taught him which corners afforded the best unnoticed observation points, and he used that knowledge now to witness the dealership's true dynamics. At the receptionist's desk, he overheard Jessica, who managed incoming calls, redirect a Latino customer inquiring about a high-end Mercedes. "Let me connect you with Mike in sales," she said, following the long-standing, unwritten protocol of routing minority customers away from luxury vehicles. Marcus stepped forward immediately. "Jessica," he said quietly after she hung up. "Why did you direct that caller to Mike rather than to Terrence, who specializes in the Mercedes line?" Jessica blinked, momentarily flustered. It's just how we usually handle calls. Mr. Harlow prefers that Mike handle the S-Class inquiries." "That practice ends today," Marcus said firmly. "Calls should be distributed according to product expertise and the rotation system Mr. Jackson outlined this morning, without consideration of the customer's perceived background." "Of course," Jessica nodded, her cheeks flushing. "I wasn't thinking about it that way." "I know," Marcus replied, his tone softening. "That's precisely the problem. These patterns become so normalized that we implement them without conscious thought. From now on, I'd like you to consciously consider whether any call routing decisions might reflect bias." As Marcus moved on, he noticed Richard Harlow watching the exchange from his office, his expression calculating. Harlow had spent most of the morning behind closed doors, making calls and sending emails, no doubt reaching out to industry connections and preparing contingency plans. Near the front of the showroom, Marcus noticed Brad Collins with a young couple examining a luxury SUV. He positioned himself within earshot. "This model typically sells for well above sticker," Brad was explaining. "But since you're here on a weekday, I might be able to convince my manager to come down a bit. We're trying to hit a monthly quota." It was a classic sales tactic, the illusion of a special deal combined with artificial time pressure. Under the new guidelines Terrence had outlined that morning, such approaches were explicitly discouraged in favor of transparent pricing. Marcus approached casually. "Good afternoon," he greeted the couple. "I see you're interested in the GLS. It's an excellent vehicle." Brad stiffened slightly. "Mr. Wright." "Yes, I was just explaining our pricing structure to the Andersons." "Wonderful," Marcus smiled. "Then you've already discussed our new upfront pricing policy. No negotiation necessary, transparent documentation of all fees, and our price match guarantee if they find the same model for less within a 100-mile radius." The couple looked surprised. "Actually, he was telling us we needed to decide today because of a quota situation," the husband said. "I was getting to the new policies," Brad interjected quickly, "just giving them context on the vehicle's market position first." "I appreciate your thoroughness," Marcus replied, his pleasant tone belying the warning in his eyes. "Perhaps you could continue by showing them our new pricing sheet, which lists the exact same price we offer to every customer." Brad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course." As Marcus walked away, he could hear Brad attempt to reframe the conversation, grudgingly acknowledging the standardized price while emphasizing the importance of add-ons and extended warranties, the remaining areas where sales staff could still influence transaction profitability. By mid-afternoon, Marcus convened with Terrence and Lisa in the conference room to assess the day's progress. "It's exactly as expected," Terrence reported. "Overt resistance from Brad and a few others, reluctant compliance from most, and genuine enthusiasm from a small minority who see the potential in the new approach." "The finance team is similar," Lisa added. "Tom keeps finding ways to reinterpret the guidelines, telling his team to use their judgment on when to apply the standardized rates." "And Harlow?" Marcus inquired. "Strategically absent from the floor," Terrence observed. "He's made himself scarce except for a few casual conversations with key salespeople. My guess is he's building a coalition while maintaining plausible deniability." Marcus nodded. "Classic passive resistance. He's not directly undermining the changes, but he's signaling to his allies that he doesn't support them." "Which brings up an important question," Lisa said hesitantly. "How long do we allow this to continue? At what point do we acknowledge that Harlow isn't going to adapt and is actually hindering transformation?" It was the question Marcus had been pondering all day. "We need to give the process enough time to demonstrate results, but not so much time that opposition can sabotage it. For now, we document everything, every instance of non-compliance, every attempt to circumvent the new policies." "And then," Terrence prompted. "And then we make personnel decisions based on data, not just impressions," Marcus replied. "Those who can't adapt will ultimately need to find opportunities elsewhere." Their discussion was interrupted by a knock at the door. Jessica, the receptionist, poked her head in nervously. "Mr. Wright? There's someone here to see you. He says he's from Auto Market Quarterly and has an appointment." Marcus frowned. "I don't have any media appointments scheduled." "That's what I thought," Jessica replied, "but he was very insistent. Said it was about a special feature on innovative dealership management." Marcus exchanged glances with Terrence and Lisa. "Tell him I'll be out shortly." After Jessica left, Terrence leaned forward. "That's suspicious timing. Auto Market Quarterly is widely read in the industry. An unflattering article right now could create problems with manufacturers and lenders." "Agreed," Marcus said. "Let's see what this is about." In the showroom, a well-dressed man in his 50s stood examining one of the display vehicles, a small recorder visible in his hand. He turned as Marcus approached, offering a practiced smile. "Mr. Wright, James Bennett, Auto Market Quarterly. Thank you for making time." "I don't recall scheduling an interview, Mr. Bennett," Marcus replied, not extending his hand. Bennett's smile didn't waver. "It might have been overlooked in the transition. I spoke with Mr. Harlow last week about featuring Prestige in our Management Excellence series. When I heard about the ownership change, I thought it even more newsworthy." The fabrication was transparent. There had been no interview scheduled, and Bennett's unexpected appearance just as changes were being implemented suggested an agenda. "How did you hear about the ownership change, Mr. Bennett?" Marcus asked. "We haven't made any public announcements yet." Bennett hesitated fractionally. "Industry connections. Our publication keeps close tabs on significant dealership transactions." "Interesting," Marcus said, "especially since the sale was deliberately kept confidential during the transition period. Only internal staff were informed, and just yesterday." Bennett's smile tightened. Perhaps one of them mentioned it to a colleague. News travels fast in this business. "Indeed it does," Marcus agreed. "Almost as if someone wanted to ensure certain narratives reach the industry quickly." From the corner of his eye, Marcus could see Harlow watching from his office, his posture tense with anticipation. The connection was obvious. Harlow had called in a media contact, likely hoping to pressure Marcus with the threat of industry exposure or to shape public perception of the changes before they could prove successful. "I'm afraid I don't have time for an interview today, Mr. Bennett," Marcus said firmly, "and in the future I'd appreciate if all media inquiries were properly scheduled through my office, not through Mr. Harlow." Bennett's expression flickered with disappointment. "Of course. Though I should mention our next issue has a special focus on minority-owned dealership groups. As one of the few black executives in luxury auto sales, your perspective would be valuable, especially regarding your unconventional approach to evaluating this acquisition." The implied threat was clear: cooperate or we'll run the story anyway, focusing on the unusual methods of the new black owner. It was a calculated attempt to leverage racial dynamics against him, precisely the kind of subtle manipulation that Marcus had fought against throughout his career. "Mr. Bennett," Marcus replied, his voice level but firm, "when Auto Market Quarterly is genuinely interested in discussing ethical business practices and sustainable profitability in auto sales, I'd be happy to contribute, but I don't respond to manufactured narratives or implied threats." Bennett's facade of journalistic interest fell away. "You might want to reconsider. This industry runs on relationships and reputation. A prominent dealer refusing to speak with the leading trade publication could be interpreted unfavorably." "I'm comfortable with that risk," Marcus replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dealership to run." As Bennett reluctantly departed, Marcus turned to find Harlow standing much closer than expected, having emerged from his office during the exchange. "Unfortunate timing," Harlow commented with false sympathy. "Bennett reaches a lot of important people in the industry: manufacturers, lenders, other dealer principals." "Yes," Marcus agreed, almost as if someone wanted to ensure our internal changes became external news before they had a chance to prove themselves. Harlow shrugged. "The reporter mentioned he heard rumors. I merely confirmed what was already circulating." "And suggested he drop by today during our first full day of implementation," Marcus added. "Quite a coincidence." "The automotive world is smaller than you might think," Harlow replied, dropping any pretense of innocence. "People talk. They're already discussing your methods. The undercover janitor approach strikes many as peculiar at best, manipulative at worst. I imagine those same people have no issue with discriminatory lending practices or targeted exploitation of vulnerable customers," Marcus observed. Harlow stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're fighting against reality, right? This business operates the way it does because it works, has for decades. One idealistic owner can't change the entire industry's DNA." "I'm not trying to change the industry overnight," Marcus countered. "I'm changing one dealership, demonstrating that ethical practices can be profitable and letting the results speak for themselves." "And if those results don't materialize? If profits drop while your competitors continue business as usual?" "Then I'll have the satisfaction of knowing I tried," Marcus said simply. "But that's not what's going to happen, and I think you know it. The market is evolving. Consumers demand transparency. The old model is already dying. I'm just accelerating the inevitable." Harlow studied him for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "I do," Marcus confirmed. "And deep down, you recognize it too. The question is whether you're willing to adapt or if you'll be left behind." The challenge hung between them, neither man willing to back down. Around them, the showroom had grown quiet, staff watching the confrontation while pretending not to notice. "We'll see who's left behind," Harlow finally said, turning away. "The month-end numbers will tell the real story." As Harlow walked back to his office, Terrence approached Marcus. "That went about as expected." "Actually, better than expected," Marcus replied. "He's shown his hand earlier than I anticipated." Bringing in media connections this soon suggests he's genuinely worried the changes might succeed. "So what's our next move?" Terrence asked. Marcus scanned the showroom, noting how quickly everyone had returned to their tasks once the confrontation ended, though many were still stealing glances in his direction. "We accelerate," he decided. Harlow wants to frame this as a battle between idealism and reality. Let's give him more reality than he's prepared for. The next morning began with an unexpected development. As staff arrived at Prestige Auto, they found the showroom had been subtly but significantly transformed overnight. Where vehicle price stickers had previously displayed only the manufacturer's suggested retail price, new transparent pricing sheets were prominently attached to each windshield, clearly outlining the dealership's actual selling price, available financing rates, and a comparison with average market values. Digital displays near the customer waiting area now showed real-time customer satisfaction scores, alongside a leaderboard of sales consultants ranked not by total sales volume, but by customer experience ratings. Most surprisingly, a large banner stretched across the back wall announcing, "Same price, every customer, no exceptions." Marcus stood at the entrance, noting the reactions as employees filtered in. Some appeared confused, others curious, and a few, particularly those most aligned with Harlow, visibly dismayed by the overnight changes. "This wasn't the timeline we discussed," Lisa whispered as she joined him. "I thought we were rolling out the transparency initiatives next week." "Circumstances changed," Marcus replied. "Harlow's media play yesterday showed he's trying to control the narrative. We need to move faster." Terrence arrived moments later, surveying the transformed showroom with raised eyebrows. "Bold move. The pricing sheets will definitely limit the old negotiation games." "That's the intention," Marcus confirmed. "We're removing the shadows where discrimination thrives." The most dramatic reaction came from Richard Harlow, who stopped short upon entering, his morning coffee nearly slipping from his grasp as he took in the changes. His face cycled through surprise, anger, and finally a forced neutrality as he noticed Marcus watching. "Interesting redecorating," Harlow commented, approaching with measured steps. "Though customarily, significant floor changes are discussed with management first." "This implementation follows directly from yesterday's announced policies," Marcus replied evenly. "The only change is the timeline. Given the external interest in our transformation, I thought it prudent to demonstrate our commitment visibly and immediately." Harlow's smile was tight. "And the customer satisfaction leaderboard? That's quite a departure from our traditional sales rankings." "It's a more accurate reflection of our new priorities," Marcus explained. "Volume without satisfaction is no longer our metric for success." Before Harlow could respond, the front doors opened, and a middle-aged couple entered the showroom. Their eyes widened slightly at the prominent "Same Price" banner, and they exchanged a look that suggested pleasant surprise. "Good morning," Marcus greeted them. "Welcome to Prestige Auto." "Good morning," the woman replied. "We're actually here to look at the new A8. We visited last month but weren't ready to commit." Marcus recognized an opportunity. "Of course, I believe Brad assisted you last time, correct?" He had no way of knowing this, but the question would reveal important information. The husband's expression confirmed his guess. "Yes, though we felt a bit pressured. We wanted to think it over." "I understand completely," Marcus assured them. "Let me introduce you to our sales director, Terrence Jackson. He'll ensure you have all the information you need without any pressure." As Terrence stepped forward to greet the customers, Harlow moved closer to Marcus, his voice low. "What happened to respecting client-salesperson relationships? Brad developed that lead." "A lead isn't ownership," Marcus replied. And from their reaction, it seems Brad's approach didn't create a positive experience. "We're prioritizing customer comfort over traditional territories." Harlow's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more as he retreated to his office, pulling out his phone before his door had fully closed. Throughout the morning, the impact of the overnight changes became increasingly evident. Customers responded positively to the transparent pricing, with several commenting on the refreshing absence of negotiation pressure. Sales consultants, however, showed mixed adaptation. Some embraced the new approach, finding it actually streamlined the sales process and reduced the time needed to close deals. Others, particularly those who had thrived under the high-pressure variable pricing model, struggled visibly. Brad Collins stood near the coffee station, gesturing emphatically to two colleagues. "This is insanity," he muttered, not bothering to lower his voice as Marcus passed within earshot. "I had a guy ready to pay $5,000 over market on that black GLS. Now the price sheet shows our actual margin, and he's wondering why we were going to charge him more last week." "Because we were," Marcus interjected, pausing beside them. "That's precisely the problem we're addressing." Brad turned, not bothering to hide his frustration. "With all due respect, Mr. Wright, you're killing our ability to maximize deals. Some customers are willing to pay premium prices. Why would we not capture that value?" "Because long-term success isn't built on extracting maximum profit from each transaction," Marcus explained patiently. "It's built on creating customers who return, refer others, and trust our process." "That sounds great in theory," Brad countered, "but this is a volume business with thin margins. We need every dollar of gross profit." "I understand that perspective," Marcus acknowledged. "It's the prevailing wisdom in automotive retail, but it's also why the industry consistently ranks among the lowest in consumer trust surveys." He gestured toward the showroom where several customers were actively engaged with salespeople. "Notice that we have more floor traffic today than yesterday, despite making no additional marketing push. Word spreads quickly when you're doing something different." Brad's skepticism remained evident, but he nodded stiffly. "I hope you're right. My mortgage doesn't get paid with customer satisfaction scores." "Give it 30 days, Marcus suggested. If your commission checks are smaller under the new system, we can revisit the conversation." As Brad and his colleagues dispersed, Lisa approached with a tablet in hand. "You might want to see this," she said, showing Marcus an email. "The regional rep from Civic Bank is concerned about our changes to the finance process. They're questioning whether we'll continue to meet volume expectations for their premium products." Marcus scanned the email, noting the thinly veiled threat that the lender might reconsider their relationship if Prestige no longer pushed their high-margin financial products. "As expected," he commented, "Harlow's been making calls. The entire ecosystem profits from the old model. Lenders, warranty companies, add-on providers. They all have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo." "Should I respond?" Lisa asked. "Not yet," Marcus decided. "Let's compile 30 days of data showing how our transparent approach affects overall finance penetration. My hypothesis is that while markup rates will decrease, product acceptance will actually increase when customers don't feel manipulated." As midday approached, Terrence sought out Marcus near the service department. "The couple from this morning, they just purchased the A8, he reported with evident satisfaction. "No negotiation needed. They appreciated the transparent price, especially when I showed them comparative market data proving it was fair." "Excellent," Marcus nodded. "How did the finance process go?" "Smoothly," Terrence replied. "They declined the extended warranty but took the maintenance package after Lisa explained the actual cost breakdown. Their comment was interesting. They said it was the first time they'd bought a car without feeling like they needed a shower afterward." Marcus laughed. "That's exactly the experience we're aiming for." "Did Brad happen to notice they purchased?" "Oh, he noticed," Terrence confirmed with a slight smile. "Spent about 10 minutes in Harlow's office afterward, gesturing rather emphatically. I imagine he's calculating the commission difference between what he would have made under the old system versus what you earned with the transparent approach." Probably, Terrence agreed. Though what he might not realize is that I completed the entire sale in half the time his high-pressure approach would have taken. I've already moved on to another customer while he'd still be playing negotiation games. The observation highlighted a key aspect of the new model that many traditionalists overlooked: efficiency. Without the protracted dance of offers, counter-offers, fake trips to talk to the manager, and pressure tactics, the sales process could be streamlined, allowing consultants to help more customers in the same amount of time. By early afternoon, Marcus had observed enough to identify the emerging pattern. The dealership staff was effectively dividing into three camps: those embracing the changes, primarily led by Terrence and Lisa; those actively resisting, centered around Brad Collins and other Harlow loyalists; and the larger middle group watching carefully to determine which direction would ultimately prevail. It was this middle group that would determine success or failure. If they saw the new approach working, generating sales and commissions while reducing customer friction, they would gradually shift toward adoption. If they perceived the changes as threatening their livelihood, they would align with the resistance. Marcus was contemplating this dynamic when an unfamiliar face appeared at the entrance, a woman in her early 40s, professionally dressed, surveying the showroom with evaluative eyes. She wasn't a typical customer. Her posture and attentive gaze suggested someone assessing the operation rather than shopping for a vehicle. Harlow emerged from his office immediately, approaching her with a practiced smile. "Diane, I didn't expect you until next week." "Change of plans," she replied briskly. "Regional wanted an early assessment given the unusual developments we've been hearing about." Marcus recognized the situation instantly. A manufacturer representative making an unscheduled visit, undoubtedly prompted by Harlow's outreach. Luxury automakers maintained strict standards for their dealerships, and any significant changes could trigger oversight, especially if framed as potentially damaging to the brand experience. He approached as Harlow was midway through introductions. "Changes implemented by the new ownership. This is Mr. Wright, who recently acquired Prestige." "Diane Morgan." The woman extended her hand. "Brand Performance Director for the Eastern Region. I understand you've made some interesting modifications to the standard sales process." "We've enhanced the customer experience through transparency and consistency," Marcus replied, shaking her hand firmly. "I'd be happy to walk you through the rationale and early results." Diane nodded, her expression neutral but evaluative. "I'd appreciate that. Our manufacturer has specific expectations regarding customer experience, particularly in the luxury segment." "Of course," Marcus agreed, "though I suspect our goals are aligned more closely than you might think. After all, both the manufacturer and the dealership want satisfied customers who remain loyal to the brand." "True," Diane acknowledged, "though our research indicates luxury clients expect a certain type of sales experience, personalized attention, a sense of exclusivity, and a negotiation process that makes them feel they've secured a special arrangement." It was a common misconception in luxury retail, the belief that affluent customers desired the negotiation ritual as part of their purchase validation. Marcus had heard this argument countless times throughout his career. "I understand that perspective," he replied carefully. "But our data suggests something different. Luxury customers value their time tremendously. They appreciate exclusivity and personalization, certainly, but not at the expense of efficiency and transparency. The negotiation process doesn't create satisfaction. It creates anxiety, even among experienced buyers." Diane raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "That contradicts our market research." "Perhaps because the research asks questions framed by traditional assumptions," Marcus suggested. "If you have a moment, I'd like to show you something that might provide a different perspective." Diane glanced at Harlow, who maintained a neutral expression while clearly hoping she would rebuff Marcus's invitation. After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "I'm here to gather information. Show me what you think I should see." Marcus led her toward the customer lounge where a couple was completing paperwork with Lisa. Harlow followed close behind, his presence a silent reminder of his continued influence with the manufacturer. "Before we interrupt them," Marcus said quietly, "I want you to notice something. That couple arrived 90 minutes ago. They've already selected a vehicle, secured financing, and are completing final documentation. Under the traditional sales model, they'd likely still be in the early negotiation phase with hours remaining in their buying journey." Diane observed the customers, noting their relaxed demeanor as Lisa explained each document clearly before requesting signatures. "Efficiency isn't the enemy of luxury," Marcus continued. "In fact, respecting the customer's time is perhaps the ultimate luxury experience." Diane's expression remained skeptical, but she observed the interaction with professional attentiveness. When the couple stood to leave, Lisa handed them their keys with a genuine smile. "Congratulations on your new vehicle," she said. "If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to call me directly." "Thank you," the woman replied warmly. "This was so much easier than when we bought our last car. We kept waiting for the 'let me talk to my manager' game to start." The husband nodded in agreement. "Honestly, we came in expecting to spend half the day here. I even canceled a meeting because car buying usually takes forever." As the couple departed, Marcus turned to Diane. "That's the experience we're creating. Efficient, transparent, and genuinely pleasant. These customers will not only return for their next vehicle, but will likely tell friends and family about their experience." "It's a single transaction," Diane pointed out, though her tone had softened slightly. "Luxury automotive sales have operated successfully under the traditional model for decades." "Successfully for whom?" Marcus challenged gently. "The industry has consistently ranked at the bottom of consumer trust surveys. Customer loyalty is maintained through product quality, despite the sales experience, not because of it." Before Diane could respond, Harlow interjected smoothly. "Our manufacturers invest billions in research and development to create vehicles that evoke emotional responses. The sales experience should match that emotional journey, the anticipation, the personal attention, the satisfaction of securing a special arrangement." It was a well-rehearsed argument, one that Harlow had likely used many times to justify the traditional high-pressure sales approach to manufacturer representatives. "Emotions are certainly part of luxury purchases," Marcus acknowledged. "But stress, anxiety, and uncertainty aren't positive emotions. We're removing negative aspects of the experience while enhancing the positive ones, the excitement of selection, the confidence in making an informed decision, the satisfaction of being treated with respect." Diane looked thoughtful. "Your approach is certainly unorthodox. The manufacturer will need to evaluate how it aligns with our brand standards." "I welcome that evaluation," Marcus replied. "Judge us by the results: customer satisfaction scores, sales efficiency, and long-term loyalty metrics." Harlow's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, the ultimate measure will be monthly sales volume and profitability. Premium manufacturers expect their dealerships to maintain certain performance standards." The implication was clear. If Marcus's new approach resulted in decreased sales or profitability, the manufacturer might have grounds to intervene or even terminate the dealership's franchise agreement. "Agreed," Marcus said confidently. "I'd be happy to share our performance data after 30 days of implementation. I believe the numbers will speak for themselves." Diane nodded, professional but non-committal. "I look forward to reviewing those figures. In the meantime, I'll need to tour the facility and speak with various team members." "Of course," Marcus agreed. "Feel free to speak with anyone you wish. Nothing engineered, nothing scripted, See Prestige as it truly operates. Harlow stepped forward. I'd be happy to accompany you, Diane. There are several team members I think would provide particularly valuable insights. I'm sure they would, Marcus commented dryly, recognizing Harlow's attempt to steer Diane toward his allies. Though perhaps Ms. Morgan would prefer to make her own selections to ensure an unbiased sample. Diane glanced between them, clearly registering the tension. I've been conducting dealership evaluations for 12 years, gentlemen. I believe I can manage an objective assessment. Her tone was professional but carried a hint of admonishment at their transparent maneuvering. As Diane began her tour, Marcus watched Harlow retreat to his office, phone already in hand. The manufacturer representative's visit wasn't a coincidence. It was another attempt to pressure Marcus into retreating from his reforms. First the trade publication, now the manufacturer. Harlow was systematically engaging every leverage point available to preserve the status quo. Terrence approached as Marcus contemplated his next move. Manufacturer rep? He asked quietly. Right on schedule, Marcus confirmed. Harlow's working every angle. He's not the only one, Terrence revealed. Brad's been telling customers that our no-negotiation policy is temporary, a promotional gimmick that won't last. He's essentially promising them that if they wait a few weeks, they can come back and haggle for a better deal. Marcus shook his head, unsurprised but disappointed. He's deliberately undermining the system to prove it doesn't work. Exactly, Terrence agreed. And it's not just customers. He's been telling newer sales consultants that these changes will cut their commissions by 30%, creating anxiety and resistance. Data will be our best response, Marcus decided. Let's track everything: time to complete sales, customer satisfaction metrics, actual commission payouts. If the new approach works as I expect, the numbers will convince more effectively than any argument. Throughout the afternoon, Marcus divided his attention between normal operations and observing Diane's evaluation. She spoke with various staff members, inspected facilities, and reviewed documentation with the methodical thoroughness of someone who had conducted hundreds of similar assessments. Harlow hovered nearby, always managing to be present when she spoke with his allies, conspicuously absent when she engaged with those supportive of the changes. By late afternoon, Diane had completed her assessment and requested a closing meeting with both Marcus and Harlow. They gathered in the conference room, the tension almost palpable as they sat across from her. Thank you both for accommodating my unexpected visit, Diane began, her tone professional but revealing little about her conclusions. I've gathered substantial information about the operational changes underway at Prestige. And your impressions? Harlow prompted, unable to mask his eagerness for her assessment. Diane placed her tablet on the table, considering her words carefully. I observed a dealership in transition with mixed implementation of new protocols and varied levels of staff acceptance. She turned to Marcus. Your transparency initiatives are unconventional for the luxury segment. They contradict certain assumptions about customer expectations in premium automotive sales. Harlow couldn't suppress a small, satisfied smile, which quickly faded with Diane's next words. However, she continued, I also observed several positive customer interactions that suggest merit in your approach. The buying process was notably efficient, and customer feedback was predominantly favorable. Those are initial reactions, Harlow interjected. The concern is long-term sustainability and profitability. A valid concern, Diane acknowledged, which is why my recommendation to regional leadership will be to monitor Prestige's performance metrics over the next 60 days before making any determinations about compliance with brand standards. It wasn't the immediate validation Marcus had hoped for, but neither was it the condemnation Harlow had clearly been expecting. A 60-day evaluation period would provide time for the new approach to demonstrate its effectiveness, assuming Harlow and his allies didn't successfully sabotage it first. "We appreciate the opportunity to prove our model," Marcus said. "I'm confident the results will align with the manufacturer's goals for customer experience and market penetration." After Diane departed, Harlow lingered in the conference room, his expression calculating. 60 days isn't long, right? Changing established customer expectations and staff behaviors takes time, often more time than idealists anticipate. "I'm not an idealist," Marcus corrected. "I'm a pragmatist who recognizes that the traditional model is increasingly alienating to modern consumers. The market is evolving, whether traditional dealers accept it or not." Harlow leaned forward, his voice lowering. "You know what I find interesting? You spent 3 months here as a janitor, observing everything, learning our operations from the ground up. Yet somehow you missed the most fundamental truth about this business: it works." "Define works," Marcus challenged. "If you mean it generates profit by exploiting information asymmetry and manipulating vulnerable customers, then yes, it works in the short term. But that model is dying, Harlow. Consumers have more information than ever before. They're comparing experiences, sharing pricing details online, rating dealerships publicly. The old approach is becoming a competitive disadvantage." "Pretty speech," Harlow dismissed. "But the numbers tell a different story. My methods built Prestige into one of the highest-grossing luxury dealerships in the region." "At what cost?" Marcus asked quietly. "How many one-time customers never returned? How many minorities were charged thousands more than they should have been? How many women were pressured into unnecessary add-ons because salespeople assumed they wouldn't understand the technical details?" Harlow's expression hardened. "Business isn't a charity, right? It's competition. Winners and losers. The strong survive by maximizing every advantage." "That perspective," Marcus replied, "is precisely why I had to work as a janitor to understand the truth. Because men like you would never reveal it willingly." The confrontation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Lisa entered, her expression suggesting urgency. "Mr. Wright, there's a situation you should be aware of," she said. "Brad just completed a sale using the old pricing model, telling the customer our posted prices were merely starting points for preferred customers." Harlow stood immediately. "Brad is a senior sales consultant with discretion to structure deals appropriately for each client." "Not anymore," Marcus countered firmly. "Our transparent pricing policy is non-negotiable." He turned to Lisa. "Has the paperwork been processed?" "Not yet," she replied. "The customer is with Tom in finance now, reviewing terms. Please ask Tom to hold the paperwork. I'll address this personally." As Lisa departed, Marcus turned back to Harlow. "This is deliberate sabotage, and we both know it." Harlow shrugged, not bothering to deny the accusation. "Or perhaps it's an experienced salesperson using his judgment to secure a sale that might otherwise have been lost. Isn't that the bottom line? Selling cars?" "Not at the expense of our integrity," Marcus replied, heading for the door. "Not anymore." In the finance office, a middle-aged man sat across from Tom, reviewing a stack of documents. Brad stood nearby, his expression shifting from confidence to concern as Marcus entered. "Good afternoon," Marcus greeted the customer. "I'm Marcus Wright, the owner of Prestige Auto. I understand you're purchasing the white E-Class sedan." The man looked up, slightly confused by the interruption. "That's right. Brad here gave me a great deal. $5,000 below your advertised price." Marcus nodded, maintaining a pleasant expression despite his internal frustration. "I see. Unfortunately, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. Our dealership recently implemented a transparent pricing policy, the same price for every customer, clearly posted with no negotiation required." The customer frowned. That's not what Brad explained. He said those prices were just starting points and he could work with me because I was a serious buyer. Marcus glanced at Brad, whose defiant expression confirmed this was no accident or misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attempt to undermine the new system. "I apologize for the confusion," Marcus said sincerely. Brad was incorrect. Our posted prices represent our best offer to every customer. No hidden discounts, no special arrangements, no games. The customer's frown deepened. "So you're saying the deal we agreed to isn't valid?" "I'm saying we have two options," Marcus explained carefully. "We can honor the price Brad incorrectly offered you today, which would be an exception to our policy, or we can take a fresh look at the actual value proposition of your purchase." The customer leaned back in his chair, visibly conflicted. "I don't understand. If you're the owner, can't you just approve the price we agreed on?" "I could," Marcus acknowledged, "but that would contradict everything we're trying to build here. A place where everyone gets the same fair deal regardless of who they are or how they negotiate." Brad stepped forward, his voice taking on a sympathetic tone clearly meant for the customer rather than Marcus. "Mr. Daniels was referred by one of our best clients. I thought we had flexibility for situations like this." It was a calculated move, attempting to pressure Marcus publicly by invoking customer connections. Marcus recognized the tactic but remained unruffled. "Every customer deserves our best price from the start, regardless of who referred them," Marcus replied firmly. He turned back to the customer. "Mr. Daniels, if you'll allow me a moment to review your purchase details, I believe I can demonstrate that our transparent pricing actually provides more value than you might realize." The customer hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "I suppose it doesn't hurt to look." Marcus sat down beside him, reviewing the paperwork Tom had prepared. As he suspected, while Brad had offered a lower vehicle price, the deal included inflated interest rates and unnecessary add-ons that more than compensated for the apparent discount. "Mr. Daniels, the deal you've been offered includes a 7.9% interest rate," Marcus noted. "With your credit score, our standard rate would be 5.3%. That difference alone adds over $4,000 to your total cost over the term of the loan." The customer frowned. Brad said that was the best rate available given market conditions. "That's not accurate," Marcus stated, glancing at Brad, whose expression had hardened. "Additionally, this extended warranty is priced at $3,200, nearly $800 above our standard pricing." Tom, the finance manager, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, caught between Harlow's influence and Marcus's direct scrutiny. "Let me show you what our transparent pricing model would offer," Marcus continued, pulling a blank worksheet toward him and quickly filling in the details. "Our posted vehicle price is indeed $5,000 higher than what Brad offered. However, with the correct interest rate and fairly priced protection products, your total cost of ownership would actually be $2,340 less over the life of your loan." He slid the completed worksheet across to Mr. Daniels, who studied it with growing understanding. "The lower payment isn't always the better deal," Marcus explained gently. "Sometimes what appears to be a discount in one area is actually recaptured and then some in others." The customer looked up, his expression shifting from confusion to something approaching anger. "So I was being misled?" "You were being offered a traditional car deal," Marcus replied diplomatically, "where negotiated concessions in the visible price are offset by profits in less visible areas. It's how most dealerships operate. We're trying something different, total transparency from the start." Mr. Daniels looked between Marcus and Brad, clearly reevaluating the situation. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Wright. I'd prefer to proceed with the transparent pricing." Brad's face flushed with barely suppressed anger. "Mr. Daniels, we had a deal." "A deal based on incomplete information," the customer interrupted, his tone cooling. "I'd rather work with someone who's straightforward from the beginning." Marcus nodded. "I understand. Mr. Jackson, our sales director, will personally ensure your purchase experience is smooth from this point forward." He turned to Tom. "Please prepare new paperwork reflecting our standard pricing and appropriate finance rates." After ensuring the transition was underway, Marcus gestured for Brad to follow him out of the finance office. In the hallway, Harlow stood watching, his arms crossed and expression tense. "My office," Marcus said simply, walking past Harlow without slowing. Once inside the conference room that was serving as his temporary office, Marcus closed the door and faced Brad, who had dropped all pretense of respect. "You just cost me a significant commission," Brad said accusingly. "No," Marcus countered. "You cost yourself that commission by deliberately undermining clear policies. Did you really think I wouldn't notice or intervene?" "Those policies are unrealistic," Brad argued. "Customers expect to negotiate. They want to feel like they've won something in the process." "What they want is to be treated fairly and honestly," Marcus replied. "Mr. Daniels wasn't upset about losing his special deal. He was upset about being manipulated." Brad scoffed. "This isn't some idealistic business school case study. This is the real world of car sales, where customers lie about other offers, dealers compete for every deal, and margins are already razor thin." "I'm well aware of the realities," Marcus assured him. "I've owned dealerships for 15 years. The difference is I've proven there's a better way to operate, one that builds customer loyalty rather than one-time exploitation." The door opened as Harlow entered without knocking. "This conversation should include me as general manager." "Fair enough," Marcus agreed. "We're discussing Mr. Collins's deliberate violation of our transparent pricing policy." Harlow stepped beside Brad, a united front against the changes Marcus was implementing. Brad was exercising the judgment of a senior sales professional to secure a deal that might otherwise have been lost. A deal that would have cost the customer thousands more than necessary, Marcus pointed out. "That's not judgment, it's exploitation." "It's business," Harlow insisted. "The customer agrees to terms they're comfortable with. Nobody forces them to sign. Comfort based on incomplete information isn't informed consent," Marcus replied. "Our job is to provide the best value proposition transparently, not to manipulate customers into accepting terms that disproportionately benefit us." Brad shook his head in frustration. "This approach might work at some mainstream volume dealership, but not in luxury. Our customers are sophisticated, they understand the game." "Some do," Marcus acknowledged, "but many don't, and even those who understand it don't enjoy it. The game, as you call it, is precisely what creates distrust in our industry." Harlow stepped forward, his patience visibly wearing thin. "Let's cut to the chase, right? Brad acted in accordance with my guidance as general manager. If you have an issue with that, it's with me, not him." The admission was revealing. Harlow wasn't simply allowing resistance, he was actively orchestrating it. This wasn't passive disagreement with the new policies, it was coordinated sabotage. "Thank you for that clarification," Marcus said, his tone cooling. "In that case, Mr. Collins, you may return to the sales floor. Mr. Harlow and I need to discuss the chain of command and its implications." Brad hesitated, glancing at Harlow, who nodded slightly. After Brad departed, the tension in the room intensified. "You're deliberately undermining these changes," Marcus stated, not a question but an observation. "I'm protecting this dealership from a misguided experiment that threatens our profitability and competitive position," Harlow countered. "As general manager, that's my responsibility." "Your responsibility is to implement the owner's strategic direction," Marcus corrected. "If you can't do that in good faith, we have a fundamental problem." Harlow's expression hardened. "The problem is your approach. You spent 3 months watching and judging us from behind a mop, decided our entire business model was flawed, and now expect everyone to abandon proven methods overnight. That's not leadership, it's arrogance. The accusation hung in the air between them. Marcus took a moment to consider his response, recognizing this confrontation had been inevitable from the beginning. "Is that how you see it?" he asked quietly. "That I was simply judging from a position of ignorance?" "What else would you call it?" Harlow challenged. "You have no idea what it takes to run a dealership like Prestige, day in and day out, making tough decisions to keep the lights on and people employed." Marcus studied Harlow carefully. "Did you ever wonder why I chose to work as a janitor rather than simply reviewing the numbers remotely? Why I spent 3 months cleaning toilets and emptying trash bins when I could have hired consultants to evaluate the business? To spy on us," Harlow replied dismissively, "to catch us in moments of candor." "Partly," Marcus acknowledged, "but more importantly, to understand the human dynamics that numbers can't reveal. To see which employees stayed late to help customers, which managers treated support staff with respect, which salespeople put genuine effort into finding the right vehicle for a client rather than pushing the highest commission option." He leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to know if Prestige's issues were systemic or individual. Was it a fundamentally broken culture, or simply a few bad actors setting the wrong tone? What I discovered was more complex than either scenario." Harlow's expression remained skeptical, but attentive. "I found a dealership full of people who knew better," Marcus continued. "Staff who recognized the ethical problems but felt powerless to challenge them. I heard finance managers question predatory rates when they thought no one important was listening. I watched salespeople apologize to each other for steering minority customers away from luxury models." He let that sink in before adding, "Most revealing were the late-night conversations among managers, including you, Mr. Harlow, discussing which demographics could be charged the highest markups, which zip codes corresponded to unsophisticated buyers who wouldn't question dealer add-ons. It wasn't ignorance or accident. It was strategy." Harlow's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny the accusations. "Every business identifies market advantages and leverages them. That's not unethical. It's competitive. When those advantages correlate directly with race, gender, or socioeconomic status, they cross the line from competitive to discriminatory," Marcus countered. "And that's not just my personal opinion. It's increasingly the legal and regulatory consensus as well." Harlow scoffed. "So this is about covering legal liability, protecting yourself from some hypothetical discrimination lawsuit. This is about building a sustainable business that doesn't require exploitation to be profitable," Marcus replied. "My other dealerships have proven it's possible. The question is whether Prestige and its current management can adapt to that model." The implication was clear. Harlow straightened, recognizing the veiled ultimatum. "So that's where we stand," he said coldly. "Either I embrace your vision or I'm out." "I'd prefer you embrace the vision because you recognize its merit," Marcus replied. "But at minimum, I need you to implement it in good faith. Rather than actively undermining it, the choice is yours." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Terrence entered with a concerned expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation developing on the sales floor. Brad is telling the team that you're planning to cut the sales staff by half and reduce commission structures." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "And this is happening right now?" "It started as soon as he left your office," Terrence confirmed. "He's got about 8 salespeople gathered by the coffee station, telling them the new pricing model can't sustain the current staff size." Harlow's expression betrayed nothing, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidental. This was clearly the next phase of his resistance strategy: create fear and division among the staff to force Marcus to retreat from his changes. I should address this immediately, Marcus decided, standing. He turned to Harlow. We'll continue our discussion later. In the meantime, I'd suggest you consider carefully where you want to stand as this dealership moves forward. As Marcus followed Terrence out, he could feel Harlow's calculating gaze on his back. The battle lines were now explicitly drawn, and the next moves would determine not just the future of Prestige Auto, but potentially the career trajectories of everyone involved. On the sales floor, a cluster of anxious-looking salespeople immediately fell silent as Marcus approached. Brad stood at the center, his posture suggesting he'd been speaking emphatically just moments before. Mr. Collins was just sharing some concerns about the new pricing model, one of the salespeople explained hesitantly, breaking the uncomfortable silence. I heard, Marcus replied, his tone measured as he surveyed the anxious faces. Apparently there are rumors about staff reductions and commission cuts. Brad straightened, not bothering to appear contrite. Just raising legitimate questions about the business implications of these changes. The staff deserves to know how their livelihoods might be affected. I appreciate the concern for your colleagues, Marcus replied, his calm tone belying the seriousness of the moment. But spreading unfounded rumors creates unnecessary fear. Let me be absolutely clear. There are no plans to reduce staff or cut commission structures. He looked around the gathered group, making eye contact with each person. In fact, at my other dealerships operating under this transparent model, the average commission per salesperson is actually higher than industry standard. Volume increases, customer satisfaction improves, and repeat business grows dramatically. That may work elsewhere, Brad countered, but Prestige operates in a unique market position. Our customers expect a certain experience. Yes, they do, Marcus agreed. They expect professionalism, expertise, and integrity. What they don't expect or deserve is to be charged thousands more based on their zip code, gender, or skin color. Brad's expression tightened at the directness of the accusation, but before he could respond, Marcus continued. I understand change creates uncertainty. It's natural to question how new approaches will affect your income and job security. Rather than speculate, let me show you concrete data. He gestured toward the conference room. I've prepared a detailed presentation on the financial results from my other dealerships before and after implementing transparent pricing. I was planning to share it tomorrow, but given these concerns, I think now is the right time. Anyone who's interested is welcome to join me. Several salespeople exchanged glances, clearly intrigued despite their skepticism. Even those most loyal to Harlow couldn't dismiss the opportunity to see actual performance data. I'll pass, Brad announced dismissively. I've heard enough promises. That's your choice, Marcus replied evenly. The door remains open if you change your mind. As Marcus led the interested staff toward the conference room, Terrence fell in step beside him. Smooth diffusion of the situation, he said quietly. Do you really have this presentation ready? It's been ready since day one, Marcus confirmed. I anticipated this moment. Fear is a powerful tool for those resisting change. Countering it requires concrete evidence, not just reassurance. For the next hour, Marcus walked the group through comprehensive data from his other dealerships, charts showing initial dips in profitability, followed by significant increases as customer trust and repeat business grew, testimonials from sales consultants who had initially resisted the transparent model before becoming its strongest advocates, and detailed commission comparisons demonstrating how the new approach actually improved earning potential for most salespeople. The key distinction, Marcus explained, pointing to a particularly revealing graph, is between short-term transaction maximization and long-term relationship building. Under the traditional model, you make more on each individual sale, but see fewer repeat customers and referrals. Under the transparent model, margins on individual transactions may be slightly lower, but volume, efficiency, and customer loyalty more than compensate. By the time the presentation concluded, The mood had noticeably shifted. Skepticism hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had been tempered by data that couldn't easily be dismissed. Several salespeople who had entered as vocal critics asked thoughtful questions about implementation and compensation structure. "I'm not asking for blind faith," Marcus told them as the session wrapped up. "I'm asking for a good faith effort to adapt to a model that has proven successful elsewhere. Judge it by the results, not by preconceptions or rumors." As the group dispersed, many seemed genuinely reassured. A few approached Marcus individually to express cautious support for the changes. The tide was beginning to turn, not completely, but significantly. Terrence remained behind, surveying the now empty conference room. "That went better than expected." "People respond to transparency and facts," Marcus replied. "Most of the resistance isn't ideological, it's fear of the unknown. Show them a path forward that benefits them and their perspective shifts." "Not everyone's," Terrence noted. Harlow watched the entire presentation from the hallway. He didn't look pleased. "I wouldn't expect him to be," Marcus acknowledged. "His authority is being challenged, not just his methods." As if summoned by the mention of his name, Harlow appeared in the doorway, his expression tightly controlled. "Impressive performance," he said, stepping into the room. "You've got them believing that this experiment might actually work." "It's not an experiment," Marcus corrected. "It's a proven business model backed by years of data." "Data can be manipulated," Harlow dismissed. "Results in other markets with different dynamics don't automatically translate here." "A fair point," Marcus conceded, "which is why we're implementing these changes at Prestige, to demonstrate their effectiveness in this specific market." Harlow moved further into the room, his calculated poise suggesting he'd been preparing for this confrontation. "I've been in automotive retail for 27 years. I've seen every trend, fad, and revolutionary new approach imaginable. Most fade within months when reality sets in. Sometimes what appears to be a fad is actually evolution," Marcus replied. "The market changes, customer expectations shift, technology transforms information availability. Businesses either adapt or become obsolete." Terrence glanced between them, reading the tension. "I should check on the sales floor," he said, tactfully excusing himself. After he departed, Harlow's facade dropped completely. "Let's stop pretending, right? This isn't about ethics or customer experience or industry evolution. This is about control. You purchased Prestige and now you want to remake it in your image regardless of the consequences for those of us who built its success. I won't deny that control is a factor," Marcus acknowledged candidly. "I invested in this dealership to implement a vision of automotive retail that I believe in. But that vision isn't arbitrary or ego-driven. It's based on proven results and ethical principles." Harlow scoffed. "Ethical principles? As if the car business has ever been about ethics." "And that's the fundamental difference in our perspectives," Marcus observed. "You see ethics as separate from business, an optional consideration at best, an obstacle at worst. I see ethics as integral to sustainable business practice." "Philosophy won't move metal," Harlow countered. "This isn't a TED Talk or a business school seminar. It's a dealership with payroll to meet and targets to hit. All of which are achievable, more achievable in fact, under an ethical model," Marcus insisted. "The data I just presented demonstrates exactly that." Harlow's expression hardened. "You've made your position clear. Now let me make mine equally clear. I won't be part of dismantling the business model I've spent decades perfecting. Either we return to proven methods, or you'll need to find another general manager." The ultimatum hung in the air between them. Marcus had anticipated this moment from the beginning, knowing that some members of the old guard would never adapt to the new approach. Still, he had hoped Harlow might eventually recognize the potential of the transparent model, if only out of self-interest. "I appreciate your candor," Marcus finally replied. and I respect your right to make that choice. But the direction of Prestige Auto has been decided. We're moving forward with transparent pricing, standardized finance rates, and ethical sales practices. If that's not a vision you can support, then yes, we'll need to part ways." Harlow straightened, a cold smile crossing his features. "You'll regret this. Half the sales team will follow me out the door. Our manufacturer relationships will suffer. Customer loyalty built over years will evaporate." "That's a risk I'm willing to take," Marcus replied calmly. "Change never comes without cost, but the cost of continuing unethical practices is ultimately higher." "Such righteousness from a man who built his entire evaluation on deception," Harlow remarked bitterly. "You lied to everyone for 3 months pretending to be something you weren't." Marcus considered this criticism thoughtfully. "I didn't present myself falsely. I actually performed the job of a janitor, completely and thoroughly. What I didn't do was disclose my full identity and intentions. There's a difference." "Semantics," Harlow dismissed. "No," Marcus countered. "It's the same distinction between a salesperson who doesn't volunteer all information and one who actively misrepresents facts. Both involve withholding, but they're not morally equivalent." Harlow shook his head, gathering his things. "Save the ethical hair-splitting for someone who cares. I'll have my resignation on your desk tomorrow." "I'll accept it with regret," Marcus replied sincerely. "You're a talented manager, Mr. Harlow. I wish you could have seen the potential in a different approach." After Harlow departed, Marcus remained in the conference room, reflecting on the confrontation. He had known from the start that not everyone would adapt to the new direction. Some, like Harlow, were too deeply invested in the old model, both financially and psychologically, to embrace change. Others, like Brad Collins, would follow Harlow's lead, creating a temporary exodus of resistance. But Marcus had seen this pattern before at other dealerships. The initial turbulence eventually settled, making way for a new culture built on transparency and fairness. Those who remained, and the new talent attracted by the ethical reputation, would ultimately create a stronger, more sustainable business. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife. "How's the revolution going? Casualties yet?" He smiled slightly, typing back, "One general manager down, probably a few soldiers to follow. But the tide is turning." The following weeks unfolded much as Marcus had anticipated. Harlow's resignation was quickly followed by Brad Collins and 3 other salespeople. The manufacturer representative, Diane Morgan, returned for her scheduled evaluation, her skepticism gradually shifting to cautious interest as customer satisfaction metrics showed significant improvement. Lisa's finance department reported higher product penetration rates despite lower markups, as customers proved more receptive to protection products when presented transparently. Most revealing was the customer response. Word spread quickly that Prestige offered a different kind of car buying experience. Online reviews improved dramatically. Market share began to tick upward, particularly among demographics that had previously avoided the dealership: women, minorities, first-time luxury buyers. 6 weeks after the transformation began, Marcus stood in the showroom observing the natural rhythm that had developed. Terrence had grown confidently into his role as sales director, mentoring newer consultants in relationship-building techniques rather than high-pressure tactics. Lisa had restructured the finance process entirely, creating a consultative approach that educated customers rather than exploiting them. As Marcus watched a diverse group of customers engaging comfortably with the sales team, he reflected on his journey from janitor to revealed owner. The perspective gained from that experience had proven invaluable, not just in identifying problems, but in understanding the human dynamics needed to solve them. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Terrence asked, approaching with a cup of coffee. "Just appreciating the transformation," Marcus replied. "It's never easy, but always worth it." Terrence nodded, following Marcus's gaze across the showroom. The team that remained has really embraced the new approach. Even some who were initially skeptical are seeing the benefits. That's the beauty of a system aligned with basic human values, Marcus observed. Once people experience treating customers fairly and still making a good living, they rarely want to return to the old way. Speaking of the old way, Terrence mentioned, I heard Harlow and Brad opened a used car lot across town, still advertising negotiable pricing and special deals for qualified buyers. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. Some will cling to the familiar until forced to change, but the market is shifting beneath their feet, whether they recognize it or not. As they spoke, a familiar face appeared at the entrance. Mr. Daniels, the customer whose transaction had precipitated the final confrontation with Brad and Harlow. He was accompanied by another couple, clearly friends he had brought to the dealership. "Mr. Daniels," Terrence greeted him warmly, "how are you enjoying the E-Class?" "Absolutely love it," Daniels replied enthusiastically. "Best car buying experience I've ever had. So much so that I brought my friends to see you when they mentioned they're looking to upgrade." Marcus smiled, exchanging a knowing glance with Terrence. This was the power of the transparent model in action. Satisfied customers becoming advocates, expanding the business through trust rather than tactics. "That's what success really looks like," Marcus said quietly as Terrence moved to greet the new customers. "Not maximizing today's transaction, but earning tomorrow's referrals." He took a final look around the showroom, not as the janitor observing unnoticed from the shadows, but as the owner whose vision was finally taking shape. The transformation wasn't complete, but the foundation had been laid. Prestige Auto was becoming a dealership where customers of all backgrounds could expect fair treatment, where staff could succeed through integrity rather than exploitation, and where profit derived from value rather than manipulation. It was, Marcus reflected, exactly what he had envisioned when he first picked up that mop 3 months ago. A business that proved doing the right thing could also be the profitable thing, if you had the courage to break from tradition and the patience to build something better in its place.